Sorry if I'm like playing with my gums.
No, you're fine.
It's gonna look weird. We can explain to the people. Like, Maddie needs surgery. Watch our YouTube and get her money for her wisdom surgery.
Maddie needs money for her. And B. Here we go. I'll do it this way.
Do like the Sarah McLachlan song.
To the arms. I'll play like some sad music at the beginning of the podcast. It's like, yes, this poor girl has had the roughest day that you could possibly imagine. She had a pop tire on the side of the road. She got home and her dog hit her in the mouth, causing pain in her wisdom teeth. And then she had to get on a podcast because her co-host couldn't reschedule for another day because he's going to be busy for the rest of the week. As she sits through this podcast through enduring pain, you too, listener at home, can make a simple donation to help Maddie out with her wisdom teeth by liking and subscribing to this podcast or on our YouTube page. This is the Hoop Southbound Show. My name is David.
Hey guys, it's Maddie.
And she's having a very, very rough day today. But, you know, please, everybody send out a prayer for Maddie or keep her in your thoughts or pray to whatever deity that you believe in and, you know, get her some better karma. Like, it's been a rough day for Maddie today. As you may have heard there in my very, brief infomercial of whatever those depressing dog and cat videos were back in the early 2000s.
I mean, those were terrible. Like, let's be honest. Like, if you were having a rough day and one of those came on, it was just like, there goes. That's it. That's the straw that broke the camel's back.
It was an emotional heartbreak. It was just a train wreck. It's an absolute train wreck. And you're just sitting there crying your eyes out as this beautiful song and these innocent puppies or kittens are, just melts your heart in an instant. Well, unlike those dog and cat videos, I just want to let everybody know that the show today is brought to you by University Traditions. Need a hat for the gym, game day, golf course, whatever. Something that shows off your school pride. University Tradition has you covered right now, and you can get 15% off your purchase with promo code VSN15. Unfortunately, they're not going to make a donation to Maddie's cause. Very sad, but maybe we can work that out on a later date. All right, so Maddie, I know it's been a rough day, but let's talk a little bit of NBA Combine. This week, the NBA Combine went down in Chicago, and as always, there were guys who were winners, and there were guys who were not winners, is the best way to put that. By the way, Eric Musselman is literally everywhere. Did you notice that he was also at the Combine in Chicago this week, talking to ESPN while he was there and giving his opinions on some of his players there. But, you know, for the SEC, one of the biggest winners I felt like this week was the guy that you highlighted last week, Jordan Walsh from Arkansas. Maddie, I know you have a draft profile you're working on for Jordan, but I think where Jordan stood out the most in the Combine was the measurements and the drills where he finished top 10 in the mid-side shooting drill. He also had a 15-point game in the second 5-on-5 game. I thought from the SEC, he was the best of the week. Your thoughts?
Yeah. You know, working on kind of the scouting report, if you want to call it, for Jordan Walsh going into the draft, I think one of the big question marks from his play this season was mainly his shooting ability. And I think he showed a lot in the drills and then also in the scrimmages that, you know, when he's confident and he's out there, he's got good form and he can be a bucket if you need one.
Yeah, and when he's on, and that's what makes him such a great player. But I thought he built himself a lot of draft stock, and like people were talking a couple of weeks ago, undrafted and probably needs to go back to college. Now here we are, we're talking second half of the second round or like first round toward the end in the 30s and late 20s is where they're talking about Jordan Walsh coming out. So he had a great combine. Let's talk about another guy from the SEC who I thought hurt himself the most this week, and it wasn't like he actually made the situation worse. It was just that he didn't help himself. It's just, you know, the guy I pointed out to say to watching the Combine, G.G. Jackson. Jackson's not a lotto pick, and he decided to sit out the 5-on-5 games. I think he made a poor choice or got bad advice from his agent for not doing this. And he could have helped himself a ton this week and proven that he was capable as being an unselfish player, because he has a reputation of being a ball hog and someone who has a bit of an attitude. Now he's kind of sitting idle and he's doomed to be a late first round pick or early second rounder. Maddie, do you agree or disagree on this?
Yeah, I agree on that. I really don't know what the play there was for Gigi. I think the big thing, after watching a few of the interviews, he was really hinting at the fact that he wanted to be with the Hornets. So, maybe trying to take himself out of the loop and they bring him on their G League squad or as a free agent later on would be my only logical reasoning that he would want to do something like that.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, there's 29 other teams in the NBA, so I mean, I don't see necessarily banking on one of those being a good bet for you, especially on a team that more or less is probably going to have some of their issues figured out at the end of the draft, because they have a very early pick to start getting themselves going in the right direction. Don't get me wrong, the Hornets are a long way from being an NBA playoff team, but you know, I can't see a bank on that in the least bit, but like I think he should have at least participated in a 5-on-5,
Yeah.
giving himself an opportunity to show some of that skill set and to show that he can play well off the ball. So those are just kind of the things I was thinking. And finally, I think the biggest loser overall in this combine was us, the fans. Once again, the majority of the top talent in the combine did not participate in 5-on-5 drills, and some didn't even participate in the drills. We know why. It's advice from their agents, but we as fans want to see the best talent go at it.
Yeah.
Every
Yeah.
time.
I mean, it's one of those things, like, obviously, if you're already going to be in one of those top spots and don't have much risk in losing that spot, like, you don't want to go out there and maybe have a bad day and hurt your draft stock. But like you said, it was more so for the fan aspect. Like, we wanted to see what they could do, up against the rest of this cast of people going into the NBA draft this year.
Yeah, you definitely want to see how other people are measuring up against this talent that some of them have never played against. Sure, I get it. If you're a lottery pick, yeah, probably save yourself. But there's plenty of guys. There's 16 other picks that are coming out of that first round that could participate in these drills. And like I said, GG Jackson is one of those guys who are on the back and didn't even participate this week. But regardless of how we feel as fans about them not playing, the NBA is listening, and we are supposedly going to they're going to fix this issue for next year's combine. So I do think that's a bit of good news for us. Also, this week, the NBA lottery took place, and we now know who's taking the first 14 picks in the draft. Maddie, this week, based on the lottery results, I put a little mock draft together. Let's go through these real fast, and you can tell me where you think I'm right and where you think I necessarily went wrong. All right, so with the number one overall pick, I don't think there's much debate about this one. Victor Wembanyama coming in at the number one pick for the San Antonio Spurs. Obviously, a huge win and an audible heck yes from the San Antonio staff there in Chicago when this was announced. I don't think you can go wrong with this. It's Victor coming into another line of San Antonio bigs who have had the opportunity to have the team built around them. The second pick, I'm looking at Scoot Henderson right now, and I like the combination where Scoot Henderson goes to the Charlotte Hornets as a point guard. Biggest thing is that I'm seeing on this one is that with Scoot, he would pair well with Ball, and in the past we've seen Ball also be paired up in a combination. So I really like the fit here for Scoot Henderson. And then third, this is probably the one that starts getting a little controversial. Brandon Miller instead of 2. I've seen Brandon Miller move all the way from 2 to 5 throughout the course of this week. But I'm leaning more toward Portland picking up Brandon Miller, or the possibility of this pick being traded to someone who really wants Brandon Miller and is willing to make a deal with Portland. And then after that, the Rockets taking on Amen Thompson because they need a small forward, and they obviously won't be able to land Brandon Miller if he's already taken. And then Jarace Walker at 5. Maddie, any thoughts on the first 5?
I think you hit the nail on the head here. And the only thing I'm kind of questioning is obviously that Brandon Miller pick. We've seen a lot of draft boards move him up to the number 2 spot after, the combine this week and some of his interviews, and, the fact that some of the things most people were worried about don't seem to be an issue.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. But on the other hand, Scoot Henderson is an elite talent, and then Charlotte is in desperate that they could use a secondary point guard to go out there and give Ball a hand. I personally still am siding with the Scoot Henderson pick, but I don't dismiss that debate. Like 100%, I do not dismiss that debate. It's very logical that Charlotte could take that pick, and I think it really hinges on how close Charlotte thinks they are to making the playoffs in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a coin toss at this point. It could go either way. But I think that's pretty accurate. It's going to be just maybe 2 and 3 swap, if anything.
For sure. All right, so for these picks 6 through 10, I'm looking at the Orlando Magic taking Azor Thompson, the other Thompson twin. And then I've got 7 right now for the Indiana Pacers taking Anthony Black. But almost every mock draft that you look at out there has the Washington Wizards. I really feel like Anthony Black could go to any of these teams that you see point guard in the critical needs category too. I think that's a real possibility. And based on some of the interviews and things that we do know about Anthony Black, it's a real possibility that he could end up with, say, the Jazz or something like that as well. Or even the Dallas Mavericks, as low as that might be the lowest that he ends up going. Washington overall, I think they're going to take a point guard. I listed Cason Wallace here, with him being the number 3 point guard in this draft. And then I mentioned Grady Dick and Taylor Hendricks I've got going to the Dallas Mavericks, but I don't dismiss the possibility that the Mavericks might trade this pick.
Yeah, I could see that as well. Just because I love it in my heart. I kind of hope Anthony Black goes number 8. Teams up with Danny G over on the Wizards. But yeah, I think, another situation where you can see some movement here. But I feel like these are pretty accurate.
Yeah, like I said, I think I've got the right players in the 6 through 10 range. It's where they're going is kind of the question, because there's needs out there, and in particularly point guard. So Cason Wallace and Anthony Black makes sense to go through the 6 through 10 range to me. It's just a question of which team. And then AB will likely go first before Cason Wallace. So that's partially my thought process, but we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I'm with you. Anthony Black going to the Wizards would be very entertaining for Razorback fans. And I don't think that's one they're cheering against. I think the 2 picks that Razorback fans are probably cheering the most for is either 8 to the Wizards or 10 to the Mavericks. Like, I think that's the consensus for Razorback fans, is whether they want to see Anthony Black get drafted. And Anthony Black even said, like, he was asked about the Washington Wizards and he said, I think they need a guard. So, interesting little tidbit there. Could be really fun. All right, let's go to my 11 through 14 that I've got put together on the mock draft. Number 11, I have Cam Whitmore. This is probably the lowest anybody will see Cam Whitmore. I'm not a big believer in Cam Whitmore, but I can understand him going higher in this draft, maybe even as high as 5. That's the general group think out there. And, I am totally open to the possibility of being wrong on this Cam Whitmore position, but this is just, if I was a GM, I would take Cam Whitmore around here. Then I've got number 12 going to Nick Smith Jr. I think Nick Smith Jr. is either going to the Thunder or the Raptors. If the Raptors are picking at 13, I think that makes sense. The Thunder make a lot of sense to me. They seem to like Arkansas players, and additionally, they also need a shot guard. So I'm really thinking that the Thunder makes sense to me as a potential pick, especially because I'm not sure if the Raptors are going to be picking at 13. And then also the Pelicans make sense as well for me for Nick Smith Jr. Maddie, any thoughts on my 11 through 14 picks? Obviously, the 14 pick right now to me seems pretty up in the air. I have no idea who's going where on that one, but it could be Nick Smith. I think Nick Smith could be anywhere from the 12 to 14 range.
Yeah, I think, like you said with Cam Whitmore, I've seen him like 6 through 8, pretty much. At some of the boards that I've looked at, Nick Smith Jr. anywhere from like 11 to 13. I've seen a lot of that. So, I mean, I think you're pretty on point here. I think it would be cool, to have Nick Smith over at OKC, but I have seen a few boards flip him and Keontae George. So it's kind of up in the air just as who they're going to choose.
Yeah, I feel like Keontae George is one of those players who are really in question. A lot of people, he's probably like the most controversial. And I don't mean controversial as a person, like controversial where someone's picking him. I've seen him much lower in the first round. I've seen people like shove him up to 11, 10. So it's pretty wild. There's no real consensus on him, but it is what it is, and we'll see where everything goes. Also, if you want more on the lotto picks, I broke them down earlier last week in a video on our YouTube channel. We're also dropping draft profiles for our SEC players in the who are in the NBA draft there as well. That's on the Hoop Southbound YouTube channel. We've got Brandon Miller, Anthony Black, and then additionally, Nick Smith Jr. and Cason Wallace are going to be dropping later this week. So yeah, definitely go check those out on our YouTube channel. As we talked about a few weeks ago, once the combine is over, we're going to start seeing players officially declaring that they're either going into the draft or they're returning to school. We're right on cue as these players have made the announcement. Players that are headed back: Tolu Smith to Mississippi State, Matt Morrell headed back to Ole Miss. Oliveira has not said where he's going yet. He said that he was transferring out of Tennessee, but he has met with schools at this time, and he has not officially said anything about him leaving the draft or not, but all signs indicate that that's about to happen. And then Uros from Tennessee is the only player so far who's announced that he's going pro. Several players still out there to mention, like Debo Davis, Jordan Walsh, several names, Kobe Brown, a lot of names out there that still have not announced, some coming back, some are not. I would think that Kobe Brown and Jordan Walsh are going to be staying to get drafted, but, guys like Debo Davis, I think going to be headed back. Triple J, I think, is going to be headed back as well. Maddie, are there any names that surprised you on this list about going pro or headed back to school?
Nothing too crazy. I'm a little surprised we haven't seen Debo make a decision yet. He rode really hard for Arkansas in the last few interviews after the NCAA tournament. So I'm, kind of waiting on a big announcement from him and his comeback tour, if you want to call it that.
Fair enough.
But other than that, nothing too crazy. A few of the Alabama players that we haven't heard much about when it comes to draft stock, looking at Mark Sears as the main one. Just kind of wondering where their head's at right now and how long they're going to try and hang on to that eligibility.
Yeah, it's a big question. I don't know why a lot of players are hanging on, and a lot of them are probably debating right now if the G League's the best move for them going forward regarding a pro career. And that might be the conversation they're having. A couple of guys might try out to do some workouts, but portal's closing, or the last day to withdraw your name from the draft is coming up on May 31st. So we're going to have to see some decisions here pretty quick. And coaches are going to want to see these decisions too, because they got rosters to fill out. So speaking of, coming up next, what if I told you there's only 15 roster slots still available in the entire SEC? Teams are locking down their rosters with the portal close. We'll bring you the latest commits and the latest recruiting news when we get back after the break.
All right, so I'm a baseball guy, and my goal is to actually see a game in every Major League Baseball stadium. Now, I'm more than a third of the way there, and I never buy from the team's websites. SeatGeek is my first stop whenever I'm heading to a new city for a ball game. Now, obviously, they've got some other sports, as well as concert tickets, Broadway, comedy, you name it. And now, for BSN listeners, they're actually offering you $20 off your first ticket purchase. So just use the code BSN, that stands for Variety Sports Network. So that's BSN to save $20. So put that to use for some food or for some drinks at whatever event you are wanting to attend. Again, that code is BSN to save $20 on your first SeatGeek purchase.
And as always, please go out and support our sponsors. We like money. I like my cable paid. Everything else so I can watch basketball and do this podcast. All right, this week we found out in the transfer portal that Caleb Love doesn't meet the academic requirements to go to school in Michigan, so he's back in the transfer portal now. Right now, On3 has Caleb Love favored for Mizzou. Maddie, will Caleb Love be a Tiger next year? Mizzou fans weren't too happy with him when he picked Michigan earlier during this portal season.
Not to trash on our Mizzou fans that listen to this podcast, but I feel like once they get some talent on their roster, they aren't going to be mad that he picked somewhere else and then reverted. Like, yes, you are the second option, but yes, he's going to get you points on the board.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Once somebody gets you points on the board, are you going to be really complaining anymore? I think it'll be long gone and forgotten if he were to pick going to Missouri. Especially when you're talking about like a player who can get you several points on the board. a player you probably need, like looking at your roster coming in the next season.
Especially if Kobe Brown goes to the draft.
Yeah, especially if Kobe Brown goes in the draft, like 100%, you're not going to turn down a guy like Caleb Love. All will be forgotten, I feel like, come about December when he puts up like 25 points in a game against somebody. So, all's well that ends well. So I'm definitely with you on that. I think Mizzou fans will be fine with that. The question is, will Caleb Love choose Missouri, or do you think other names are going to kind of approach him now that we know that things are getting a little bit rough in the transfer portal? Like, I'm thinking Kentucky, who we're going to talk about here in a second.
I could see that. I could see Kentucky. I could see Chris Beard reaching out.
Chris Beard would make sense.
I don't know. I could see a couple different plays. Depending on who else decides to stay from Tennessee, you could see maybe them reach out. I don't know.
Yeah, I do think that there's several blue blood programs out there that are trying to fill out rosters, and I think a movement on Caleb Love is possible. But right now, it seems that Mizzou's the front runner, but we'll definitely see how that goes between now and then. So it's very likely we could see some new names that are very different from the first time that we saw Caleb Love in the transfer portal during this season. All right, so additionally,
I love a good villain story.
Oh, he's 100% going to be a villain story. Yeah.
Let's see him go to Duke.
No, that would be great. Send the kid to Duke if they got a roster.
We would never hear the end of it from UC fans.
I was listening to Ion College Basketball this week, and or it was a couple weeks ago actually, and they were talking about, like, is the Duke villain thing still around? And I would say, yeah. I was like, oh, I'm 100% a Duke hater. Like, it's less now that Coach K is not there. And it's not like any shot against Coach K. Coach K is a great basketball coach. I hate Duke because I hate Duke. I don't hate Duke for a reason. I just hate Duke more than anything else. But, I still feel like they're the villains of college basketball. So, like, I don't think that's changed.
Yeah, I don't think so. But, just him coming from UNC, if he went to Duke, like, it would be every headline for so long. And it would be so fun to watch.
Oh, it would be hilarious. Oh, most hated man in North Carolina history right there. Well, perfect villain story. Perfect Duke story at that, at most. Yeah, it would be super entertaining if the villain shall reign there. But, like, I don't think that's on the table. I don't think that's a possibility. But there's some other blue bloods and those upper level echelon programs are out there. Like, we may see Indiana throw their name out there. Like, there's some other teams out there that may throw their name out into this list, and I think it's entirely possible. We're kind of seeing that right now with Cam Spencer. So it's definitely a possibility, because there's teams out there who you would expect to spend a lot on NIL, and Caleb Love is worth the money in a lot of people's minds. So it's definitely possible. But right now, it seems that Mizzou is the front runner. All right.
Yep.
So also in the transfer portal, Vin Allen Lublin from Notre Dame, the number 53 transfer according to On3. And I'm sorry if I butchered this name. I didn't watch a lot of South Dakota basketball this season. But Tazos Kamatiros from South Dakota, who is outside the top 300 according to On3, have all committed to the Vanderbilt Commodores. So, Jerry Stackhouse finally getting a little bit of movement there in Vandy that he desperately needed.
Yeah, I think, you mentioned out of the top 300, Jerry Stackhouse knows what he's doing with his X's and O's down there. He's going to find a play for that man to flourish in the program. And I think it'll be interesting to see what he does for him this year.
He's a big player. They're losing Liam Robbins. It makes sense to me that they need a replacement piece, and it's something they could definitely use, especially because, like, it kind of surprised me. Darian Ford committed to Arkansas State. So, I from my understanding, he had a pretty good visit to Vanderbilt, so I'm surprised he didn't go to Vandy. It definitely been an opportunity. So I'm still playing SEC basketball. I'm close to home in Arkansas and Nashville. Like, I thought Vandy made sense to me, but apparently Arkansas State turned out to be the better situation for Darian. I don't know the full extent of that story, but it was very surprising to me, not that he did not in Vanderbilt, but Jerry Stackhouse grabbing some good players here. It looks to be a good situation for Jerry Stackhouse to pull some players in. All right. So obviously I mentioned Kentucky earlier. They're one team that has definitely been struggling in the portal this season so far. Now, I didn't expect a ton of movement from the Wildcats to begin with, but Cal might find himself in a rough spot with the players that he has right now, and so many of them looking at heading to the NBA. Kentucky has lost Wheeler, Frederick, Ware, and Collins all to the portal. And then Reeves, Toppin, and Sheboy and Livingston are all testing the NBA waters right now. We don't know who's coming back to school. We don't know exactly what's up. Cal came out and said this: I believe we'll have the guys coming back that need to come back, and we'll go from there. The best teams I've had here were a combination of young kids and veterans. This team, in my mind, should have both. As it stands right now, Calipari has just 7 scholarship players to work with less than 2 months from UK being scheduled to represent the United States at the FIBA Global Jam in July. Kentucky is currently only returning 2 players who are going to be sophomores, who combined just for an average of 4.8 points a game and 4.5 rebounds in their freshman year. Maddie, is it time to hit the panic button if you're Cal?
So David, I don't really know. I don't think it's time to hit the panic button yet. Few more weeks until the draft. Although, like you said, next week we are nearing end of time to pull out. I mean, if we're going to be honest, I really think the only huge threat here that's not going to have talent covering is Oscar Tshiebwe. And if we're going to be honest, he was kind of hit or miss last year, depending on the game. Second half of the season, he kind of got his swag back. First half, I mean, if he plays like that next year, it's not going to make much of a difference. But I think his draft stock only keeps going down if he stays in college any longer.
Yeah, because I think I know this might be controversial to some Kentucky fans. I've seen it both ways. Is that a lot of Kentucky fans also agree with me. I tend to think that Kentucky's offense is kind of not static. I guess static might be the right word. Stationary, doesn't move much. When Tshiebwe's on the floor. So it's kind of a confusing proposition. Is does losing Tshiebwe actually hurt you? You may not have the big you want, but you can figure that out in the transfer portal. There's still players out there. Then additionally, I think the other side of this whole conversation, sure, there's only 7 scholarship players on the roster right now for Kentucky. You're going to get guys back. You're going to get guys back. You just don't know who's going back. You may not know that situation completely, but you're going to get guys back. And then even if you don't get Oscar Tshiebwe back, like I said, you can go to the portal and find somebody. And then the reason I don't think you have a lot of replacement pieces right now is because of the way the construction of the roster is. When you get these veterans back, and then you have all these superstar talented players that are coming in to play their freshman year in Kentucky, who's going to go to a school where you can't start in the transfer portal? We're filling bench spots if you're Cal. Really, we are. And so you're only looking for about 3 to 5 players who can play limited minutes or be on the bench for emergency situations. And then you can just open the door for some walk-ons. Guys who are never going to see floor time, guys who are going to see floor time in maybe when you're up 30 with 2 minutes left. Those guys are maybe the walk-ons that you're adding to the team.
GPA boosters.
Yeah, I'd go back. If I'm Cal, what I'm doing is I'm going through the roster and I'm going to go find, the players that I know are more than likely going to stay in the NBA draft and going to find the best replacement I can find right now in the transfer portal. Yeah, I missed on Hunter Dickinson, but maybe I can go get somebody else right now and fix this problem. And then after that, I'm going old school, and I'm going back to the foundation of Kentucky basketball. And I'm going to these gyms. I'm going to these practices all around the state of Kentucky, and I'm going to go find some quality walk-ons that I want as preferred walk-ons who are from the state of Kentucky and have always wanted to be a Kentucky Wildcat. And they're going to be my guys who are going to help me out in practice and get those 2 minutes when we're up by 30 against, Coppin State. That would be my move if I'm Cal. And then because I got enough talent to run a team, what I need now is bench players and walk-ons, and more than anything else. So, like I said, talent is going to come back. It's not necessarily the best move for all these players to go to the G League. So guys are going to come. You just got to go figure out what those roster gaps are. And then you're going to be relying on some 5-star freshmen next year. That's probably the situation. We saw how that worked out for Arkansas, but we also saw Arkansas had a lot of injuries last year. And, Cal's really good at developing these freshmen. I mean, we saw Anthony Davis. We saw a lot of these guys in the past who have been absolutely great as freshmen, for the one and done Cal system. So it'll be interesting to see. Any other thoughts that you have on this Cal situation on the roster?
Not much on the roster. Mainly, going back to Sheboy, I really think, like you said, I don't think he's going to improve his draft stock if he goes back to Kentucky. So I think that's the main person Cal is going to be looking to replace. Big man ball's kind of gone away. The older you get, worse those knees get.
Being 7 foot doesn't help those knees.
I was about to say, when you're a big man, makes it even worse. So, I think we do see Sheboy go to the draft, and, Cal's going to have to fill that spot. I think we see, at least one guard or wing position come back. So, like you said, 3-4 spots, mainly bench players. I don't think Cal has anything to worry about.
Yeah, I think we can definitely get that worked out for sure if you're Cal. This to me does not feel like a panic situation. I think it's a bit of an overreaction from Kentucky fans. Like I said, I didn't expect a lot of portal movement. I think they did, but I did not with the way that this roster was constructed. But, they'll figure it out. Cal's got time. There's players out there. And like I said, he's looking for role players, I think, more than anything else. And it's just going to be a young team next year. But I think that overall was Cal's plan, was to have a young team with veteran leadership inserted, because there's going to be guys coming back. All right, let's stay on Kentucky real fast. Also on the Kentucky front, and some good news for Big Blue Nation, Kentucky has hired John Welch as an assistant coach. Welch has been involved in every level of basketball and has been an important part of the development of NBA careers for guys like Carmelo Anthony, Paul Gasol, DeMarcus Cousins, Blake Griffin, and Brook Lopez. Welch has served as an assistant coach in the NBA for nearly 20 years and has spent nearly almost 10 years on a collegiate staff prior to moving into the profession. He has worked under coaches such as Doc Rivers, George Karl, Jason Kidd, and Huey Brown. He will be tasked as serving as a vital part of Cal's offensive strategy while being a primary contributor to UK's scouting and game planning. Furthermore, Welch will be a part of the development and implementation of all individual on-court players and training. Maddie, I love this hire, and here's why. NBA. For the long-term productivity of Kentucky, we talked about it, I think, maybe even a week ago. I know I talked it on Caleb's show this week when I was a guest host on his show this week. NBA, when you're an NBA level freshman coming out of high school, or you're a transfer player who has goals to get into the NBA, where do you want to go play? You want to go play for coaches who are going to help you get in the NBA. And I think John Welch is a great addition for Cal staff on two fronts. He's got that NBA experience. He's coached some of the best players out there in basketball. He's coached for great coaches out there in the NBA. And he's done fantastic work on that front. So he's definitely a player or a coach that if I was a player, I would be wanting to go work with 100%. And then Cal's got that NBA experience to show me how to get into the league. He's got the resume to show me that he knows how to get players into the league. So I really like this in an era where Kentucky might be struggling on the front with NIL and getting players in there. At least you have this resume point to pull some players additionally to your squad. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you look at Welch and you look at his kind of career path. He is fantastic developmentally. And I think that's going to transfer well into Kentucky when you have these players that, come in as freshmen that are expecting to be one and done, that talent or maturity level may not be there. And I think he's going to be a great guy to help them kind of get to that next step, transition well into college, and be ready for that transition from college to NBA.
Absolutely. And then, like I said, turn back to, I forgot what month it was, but it was sometime at the early portion of conference play when we first started the YouTube channel this last season. Part of the problem was that Cal needed help on the offensive strategy portion of it. And here's John Welch, who's going to be part of that offensive game planning now. So I'm really excited for what Cal's got in John Welch bringing to this program. So I think it's a really good move for Kentucky, especially in a season where, the seats not hot on Cal because it's just never going to be really hot on Cal, but it seems to be a do or die season for Cal. And to find some success after how many disappointing seasons they've had in a row now. They've had 3 disappointing seasons by Kentucky standards the last 3 years. And now you're getting a guy who's really going to help you out. And I think it's a really good situation.
Yep. Big plus for Kentucky. Big get for them. I think it'll be interesting to see how he's going to help all those 5 stars that are coming in. And then, some of those that may not make it in the draft this year and how they develop and do in next year's draft stock.
100%. All right, let's turn to recruiting real fast. I'm going to try to go through these headlines as fast as possible. But these are things that are worth noting. 3-star combo guard Andre Mills has committed to Texas A&M. This is all class of 2024, unless I otherwise specify. Arkansas, Alabama, and Kentucky have all made the top 6 for the number 1 prospect in the 2024 class in the country, Trey Jackson. He released his list of his cuts this week. 4-star combo guard Isaiah Seeley out of Springdale, Arkansas, has received an offer for Arkansas, but that's class of 2025. 4-star small forward and Arkansas and Auburn target Anor Boateng has been invited to play in the Adidas Euro Camp in Italy. Jaron Stevenson is expected to announce his commitment on June 9th. Alabama and Mizzou are both in the conversation for the 2024 5-star power forward. And then finally, no one knows what the deal is with Ron Holland. But Kent Smith from Sports Illustrated wrote in an article that Texas holding Holland hostage means win for the Razorbacks either way. Short-sighted, and this is, as he says, short-sighted Longhorn administration is doing long-term damage to the basketball program. Texas is, of course, a massive recruiting ground for the Razorbacks. Maddie, your thoughts real fast on any of those headlines. I know Hog fans want to talk about Ron Holland.
Yeah, I think with the Ron Holland situation, it just looks terrible on Texas. Like, you don't want to be a player, trying to make a decision about what you're going to do with your life, especially, for the top recruit in the United States. It's just one of those situations, like, you're going to look at that school differently because, like, well, if I change my mind, they're going to make me either stay and I'm not going to want to play for them, or they're going to make it as miserable as possible to get out.
I mean, that's the way it's going right now. Listen, this is the most Texas headline I've ever heard in my life. This is the most Texas doing Texas stuff I've ever heard. I can't sum up Texas in a better sentence because, like, they love to hurt themselves. They love to do stupid things. And this is exactly right on that front. This is my last season I get to badmouth Texas, so I'm just going to let it out here for a second because, like, soon enough their fans will be listening to this show. And then they're all going to find out how much I dislike Texas. But, 100%. I just can't, in a nutshell, think of a different way to describe Texas. You got a player who does not want to play for you. He wants to go somewhere else, a school that you constantly claim is not your rival, even though you have a massive history with them about it. And you're holding that player potentially hostage because it's between that school and the G League for him. And that things are not good right now. And Ron Holland, more than likely, does not want to be under there in Texas for Rodney Terry with a coach who does not have a resume that says you get players to the NBA where they want to go. I committed to Chris Beard. I want to go somewhere else now, maybe to a coach who can help me get there. So it 100%, this is Texas in a nutshell. When I think Texas, this is the perfect headline to sum up Texas in my mind. So as always, this is why the Shorthorns disappoint everyone. So that's my spiel on Texas on this one.
No, I think you should keep going.
I should just keep going, just bad-mouthing Texas.
Just keep bad-mouthing Texas.
I vomit in my mouth because I'm a big fan of the Ion College Basketball Podcast. I listen to it on a weekly basis, but I want to vomit in my mouth every time Matt Norlander says that Texas is a better program than Arkansas at basketball. I'm sorry, the school that has less Final Fours, less Elite Eights, less everything, no national championships, and I can keep going down the list just because they got a little bit more money.
I was about to say, because they have the fancy new Moody Center.
Yeah, they have the fancy new Moody Center, and they had Chris Beard for 6 weeks. So, oh my gosh. It's the most Texas thing I could possibly imagine. All right, when we come back, Our state by state Who's the Best project continues, and we will take a look at the state of Florida. You know, when we do the state by state project in Texas, if Texas is in the top 5, everyone's going to be calling bias on me after that. We're coming back. We're talking about Florida, it's historic basketball after the break.
Let's be honest, you're here because you love sports. We love sports too. And our friends over at Row One Brand love sports as much as we do. Row One Brand sells sports wall art, sports gift watches, and vintage apparel with ornamental designs created from real game ticket stubs and vintage sports memorabilia in their collection. If you want some vintage Golden State Warriors memorabilia, they have that too. It's a sports collector's dream website for anything sports related. Go over to row1brand.com to check out their great inventory. And when you use the promo code VSP15, you'll get 15% off any item on the whole site. That's code VSP15 for 15% off any item on the site. So click on the link below and go check them out. Row Run Brands, America's best vintage sports art, sports gifts.
All right, Maddie, let's go through these top 5 schools in Florida. All right, so when I was doing the research project this week, my biggest note on Florida is while you would expect a lot of background with all these schools that they have in Florida, you would expect probably some crazier teams to pop up in the course of things, and you would expect maybe a long extended history for a lot of these teams. The truth is that I think with the Sun, and this is my theory, I haven't researched it enough, but I think with the Sun Belt migration into Florida, a lot of these schools are a lot younger than what you would think they are. Like, you know, with the population boom in Florida, with the invention of the air conditioner, God bless it, especially because we're coming up in that time of year here in Arkansas. You know, it's a lot of these schools didn't have the chance to grow, and they're very young schools in comparison. So that was one of the biggest learning points to me. And so Florida basketball is probably not what you would expect.
Yeah, no, getting into this, I figured Florida would be one of the bigger ones that's, you wouldn't expect it right off the bat. But then you kind of look into it. I feel like there's schools everywhere that could have a long history.
Yeah, you would think that, but like just in the case, like I said, with the population boom in Florida, there's a lot of young schools in Florida. So it's just a weird expectation. All right. So
you don't have anybody in those retirement homes.
I don't think a lot of people going to play ball. I'm about to say, I don't think a lot of people in nursing homes and those retirement communities out there in Florida have exactly decided that they're going to go hoop it up a little bit.
Uncle Jerry's not lacing up, so what you're telling me?
Nope, I don't think he is. All right, let's. I'm going to mention my first honorable mention here, which goes to Barry U from Florida. And this is why I'm putting Barry U on the honorable mention list. They have the best website I have ever seen for finding all the data that I've been using for this list. They just have it listed, and then if it's not on that page, they send you to another one, and they got the link right there to click on, and it was great. I was disappointed they did not end up in the top 5. I was like, I would love to talk about this school because they have the best record book I've ever seen on their website. Long shot, best ever. Shout out to Barry U. I believe they're the Parrots or something like that. The Parrots or the Pirates or the Buccaneers, I don't recall, but shout out to Barry U. Yeah, they got a parrot for a mascot, or in their logo, so I'm digging it. So yeah, shout out to Barry U. Best record book I've dealt with so far in this entire research project. So yeah, they deserve that honorable mention. Everybody go, if you work for a website for your university, go check out their website on how they do their history book, almanac, and record book and stuff. Perfect. Love it. It's brilliant. Take note. All right, let's start with the number 5 team on this list, and that is the Miami Hurricanes. All right, so Miami is currently themselves in a golden age of basketball right now. This is the best the Miami program has probably ever been, and they've shot themselves up into the top 5. They had their first Final Four this season. They've had over 1,000 wins at a 57% win percentage, and then historically they've had 15 NBA players. And then they're one of the few schools out there, because you forget they were in the Big East once upon a time. They have conference titles in 2 P7 conferences, which we're going to get in that debate at the beginning of the season if it is P7 anymore, or if it's just P6 with the addition with the new Big 12. But Point is, they've got out of the major conferences 2 conference titles in 2 different conferences. And that was enough to give the Hurricanes a grand score of 164.77. Pretty interesting for Miami there.
Yeah. Honestly, I had one of them as my picks to being top 5, mainly because with their recent history, I feel like you see their name quite a bit going up the boards every season. Obviously, their Final Four this year helped a lot, but I feel like there's somebody's name that you always hear. Like, you may not see it in the bracket, but they're usually in the mix at some point or another.
Yeah, 100%. Like, the last couple of years have been fantastic for the Miami basketball program. And that's what it came back. Seems to be the theme with Florida, is that recent history seems to be very powerful in Florida because these teams are not as old as you'd think they are in comparison to other schools. All right. So our number 4 school goes to Nova Southeastern. This may be ringing a bell, this Division II school, to a lot of people who are sitting on the listening to the podcast regularly. Sunahara, who just transferred to Georgia, was part of this team last year for Nova Southeastern, and they are the current D2 national champions. And then currently under their current head coach, who is by the name of Jim Crutchfield, he has an 86% win percentage at Nova Southeastern. It's fantastic. They've had 2 undefeated seasons in conference. They are one of the youngest programs to win a national championship in the country, and they have an undefeated season to their credit. That gave them a grand total of 169.16 for the Nova Southeastern Sharks. Maddie, thoughts on the Sharks?
I mean, it sounds like they need to start beefing up their schedule and
maybe move up.
See some maybe non-conference games with some bigger schools.
Something like that.
Something like that. I don't know.
I thought it was impressive. They've had a pretty rough patch of history. They actually have all time a below 50% win percentage. But they've accelerated under Crutchfield. And it's been really good for Nova Southeastern. It's a move that, they're really happy with, I can guarantee you, for Nova Southeastern. So
based on that, do you think that's a name we may see in the future?
Possibly.
Coach Talks moving up a level to D1?
Possibly. Maybe someday we might hear that. It would be very interesting. I know the Atlantic Sun is consistently a conference that seems to be looking for new teams. And I think they're reworking some stuff for their football with schools like UCA and some others. I'm not sure. They're one of those conferences that are in that region. The SoCon might look to expand, and that would make sense for them. It's pretty close to that South Carolina and North Carolina region for them. So, it would make sense for maybe one of those teams or one of those conferences that are over there in that southeastern corner to make an addition. But we'll have to see. It's a large state, so if they can grow their fan base, it would be a really good situation though. So it's a possibility. We saw Bellarmine move up relatively quickly after winning a D2 national championship. If Coach Zane Gibson's listening right now, maybe he wants to schedule a basketball game at some point against Nova Southeastern. That would be fun, and get the high profile D2 game going there in Fort Smith. That would be a ton of fun. So, that'd be really good. All right, let's move on to our number 3 school. So it was really tight between this school and Nova Southeastern. It was really, really tight. I gave the Sharks more points in their weighted category, whereas Embry-Riddle is our number 3 school. The Eagles, they have 1 national title to their credit. One of the best win percentage we've seen since we started the project at 69% all time. They have 20 combined conference titles, and they're a very, very small school, and it's very impressive that they have a national title. It was good enough to give them a score of 170.62. And also, Maddie, interesting fact about Embry-Riddle, that is a school that specializes in making pilots. And not the traditional school that you would think when it comes to Division II basketball.
Yep. I actually looked into Embry-Riddle a little bit when I was in high school. Wanted to be a pilot, but did not. So
did not choose to go to Embry-Riddle. Well,
that's about the only reason I knew what Embry-Riddle was.
All right. So let's go to our number 2 team. And this is the first time that we've had a school jump 2 national champions in the top 5 to end up higher than them, and that is the Florida State Seminoles. They do not have a national championship, but they were the runner-up in 1972. They have over 58% win percentage all time and a grand total of 51 all-time NBA basketball players. Huge number of alumni going to the league for the Seminoles. Some of their X factors that I included on here is that they have conference titles in 4 different conferences. That's crazy how many times Florida State has jumped conferences and gone somewhere else. Yeah, 4 different conferences. It's wild. And then they have an over 50% win percentage all time against their rival schools. And they're one of the rival schools I suspect is a lot of people are waiting for to come up on this list. But they ended up with the Seminoles with a score of 249.68 for a weighted total of 30, given that grand total. Maddie, thoughts on the Seminoles? Of course, it's a school that we see regularly in the NCAA tournament, maybe not here in the immediate recent, but over the last couple of years, Florida State's been out there a lot and we know their name.
Yeah, this one kind of shocked me. I figured if they were going to be in, they would be maybe like 4 or 5 spot. It was just one of those schools, first thing that comes to my mind is football for them. May have been throwback to Jameis Winston, but I was surprised with their basketball program.
I traditionally think Florida State as a football school as well. But they've been decent at basketball. So it's been impressive. So yeah, the big 3 in Florida all made the top 5. Miami, Florida State, and our number 1 school, the Florida Gators. Back-to-back national champions at one point, over 56% win percentage all time, 40 all-time NBA players. They are the oldest D1 program in the state of Florida. And of course, as you may know, they have a very, very famous coach who's probably considered in the top 15 all time in college basketball, in the great Billy Donovan, who has coaching connections across the NBA. Interesting for Florida. This program had very, very little support. They didn't even have a modern arena until the 80s. And they've had little support for nearly the first 60 years of their program. There was no investment. A lot of people think that Florida was always an all-time great at football and basketball. The truth is that football and basketball actually didn't start really developing in their athletic department until some years later. But yeah, Florida, it's kind of more recent thing, but like they are sitting with a grand total of 485.02 on our score cell here for the Florida Gators. Impressive school. Great history, and so far that's our second highest score that we've had on the list, and I think I already know who number 1 is. I think most people can guess who our number 1 team is going to be when we get done with this project going across all the SEC states for who the number 1 project is. But yeah, I was unsure how close they would be to Arkansas. They were definitely within 100. I had no idea if Florida would pass Arkansas or not when I was doing the math.
Kind of a no-brainer for me. I assumed that Florida would be number 1 in the state of Florida, just given, like you said, recent history. We got back-to-back national champions in the 2000s, several NBA players, and, just overall fantastic program that continues to build.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And then, I grew up in probably the golden Billy Donovan era. Watching Joakim Noah and all those guys, great basketball talents through that entire age of basketball for the Billy Donovan years. When Billy Donovan was coming up, facing Coach Nolan Richardson, always great games. It's always been a really good team. Billy Donovan also had that great rivalry with Kentucky several years. He's really the face to me of Florida basketball when you think about their history. But yeah, when you did the math,
or court that's named after Billy Donovan.
Do what?
Isn't it? Isn't there court named after Billy Donovan? Okay.
I do believe so. Yeah. But yeah, the only thing that I think Arkansas ended up when I looked at the math and broke it down is because we do favor March on our scale here, and because Florida had that little support throughout the years, they did not have that much deep history when it came through the course of March Madness. So they were much lower in that department than you'd expect. Even with the 2 national championships, there was this point gap that was made up with Arkansas reoccurring in the Sweet 16 4 more times, or the Elite 8 3 more times, or something like that. Those are rounded numbers. I'm just talking off the top of my head, but like that's kind of what it is in comparison, is that like Arkansas with 1 national championship, Florida with 2. but Arkansas has a much deeper, and I think that's how Arkansas ultimately overtook it. I was thinking it was going to come down to NBA players. They were close enough to where that almost didn't make a factor. So like, I think if Florida had more NBA players, it would have expanded their score out, and they probably could have taken that number one, but it was really close. It was closer than what I thought. And I think our system favors March a little bit more than people might think.
To what you would expect, the way we hype up March Madness, I feel like.
What are we playing for? We're playing for March. And that's why I favored March when I was putting the scale together. You know, I don't know how else you factor that in. So like that was my thought. Maybe some point total adjustments when I finally do the grand, put all this stuff together as a final project someday when I put the book together. But we'll see how that goes down the road. All right. Before we go, of course, one player yesterday, if you're listening to this show on YouTube on Tuesday, mentioned that he is retiring from professional basketball today, and he is a player that I definitely want to give a little bit of attention to here in the last couple of minutes of the show, and that is, of course, the great Carmelo Anthony. Maddie, we saw the news. Carmelo in college won a national championship at Syracuse. One of the all-time greats, played for the Knicks, played for the Nuggets, kicked butt when it came to international basketball in the Olympics. Carmelo Anthony, a great prestigious career, may have his number retired somewhere, either in Denver or in New York. Maddie, your thoughts on Carmelo Anthony and his retirement?
Oh, I think we definitely see his number retired. Growing up, I was a big Allen Iverson fan, so it was, they always pit them against each other. We got Iverson versus Melo. Big guy for the game of basketball. Got a lot of people on board to watch the game, and just honestly, I'm gonna miss him. I'm kind of surprised he's not going with Dwight Howard over to Taiwan. Is that where he's at?
Yeah, I think so, somewhere like that.
Somewhere in Asia, but yeah, I think that'd be fun. I think he's trying to get LeBron over there too, so maybe we see a power team with Dwight Howard, LeBron James, and Carmelo Anthony.
They just, live it up for all the fans over there in Taiwan for their last glory run. Yeah, we'll see. But I was kind of like when seeing this news. Carmelo Anthony was a big part of my childhood growing up when he was playing in college in the early days of his NBA career. And that was back when I was very much into NBA basketball. So Carmelo Anthony has, a great history with the game. He's, how many players have you also, I grew up playing video games as a kid, as a lot of people my age and all Gen X or Gen Z does now. With Carmelo Anthony, how many players have been on the cover of both March Madness and NBA Live? Like he was on the cover for both at one point. And honestly, the game, I think it was March Madness 2004 with Carmelo Anthony on the cover for that one. He was probably, that was one of the best March Madness games that EA Sports ever made. So, that was a ton of fun back in the day. But I think we were all accustomed to, seeing Carmelo Anthony grow up if you're a child of the 2000s.
Yep. I mean, not shocking that, his time has come for retirement, but it'd be sad to see him go. Just a legacy leaving the NBA. So.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a legacy, and definitely someone that we're all going to miss. But, he's a face in basketball, and he's not going to be forgotten in an instant. So, it'll be definitely interesting to see who retires his number first. He also wears the same number as Jokic, which, by the way, the NBA finals are tonight as we're watching. So not the finals, the conference finals are tonight. And I'm definitely going to be checking out to see the Nuggets and the Lakers here when we get done recording, see how that turned out. Of course, our listeners who are on Tuesday morning on the YouTube channel already know how that turned out. And, did they get the sweep? I wish you guys can come back in time and tell me so I know who to put money on tonight. But I'll bet the house, guys, if you can figure out how to do time travel that way. Anyway, so I'll be interested to see that. And then, of course, like if you are a Tuesday fan, you're gonna be watching the conference finals between the Celtics and the Heat. So especially we might have some Florida fans who are listening for the history portion of that. Might be some Heat fans.
Yeah, I don't know on that one. I hope the Lakers at least take one game. I don't want them to get swept.
Yeah, I feel you. I definitely do you want the Lakers to get swept? Probably not. The Lakers, like, to me, one of those teams that I absolutely hate. Oh, you bet. They're kind of like the New York Yankees to me, so I'm okay with this. I really am. So it's fine in my opinion, but it'll be fun to watch regardless. It's a good time. It's that time of year where we're watching the best in basketball play for a championship, and we're also trying to find out the end of the college games results and who's going to get drafted where, and we're going to cover more of that next week. Thank you guys so much for listening, and once again, please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel or follow the podcast on Spotify or Apple. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you guys for sticking with us through this first season, beginning of the second, and we're excited to bring you guys more stuff.
Yep, definitely. All right, guys, talk to you later.
Thanks.